In the ancient world, technology was used in some unlikely locations. Perhaps the most unusual was the temple. Stunning machines are described, which created illusion and magic. Statues that cried tears of blood. Temples that roared with thunder. And chariots that levitated in the air. All of these temple machines used sophisticated engineering techniques. These were machines of the gods. Today we're familiar with the magnificence of the temples of antiquity and the gods that inhabited them. But it's only in more recent times that the engineering marvels of the temple and its religious ceremonies have become known.
We know from a whole host of references the diversity and the range of machines that were invented in the ancient world for all sorts of purposes. The priests of this time were almost like magicians or conjurers, and they would manipulate the worshippers and they would generate an atmosphere. As these various mechanical devices came into operation, it would be the sort of peak of the particular rite of worship.
More than 2,000 years ago, religion played an incredibly important role in society. Crowds flocked to their local temples, but not just for spiritual comfort.
The temples were places to go and be scared. And the priests were there to scare, to invoke a sense of awe, to play upon the hairs on the back of your neck.
And to make sure that their flock was suitably awestruck, the priests made use of the cleverest technical tricks that the greatest minds of the ancient world could devise. One of those minds was Heron of Alexandria, who devised an amazing array of intricate and elaborate machines.
Heron of Alexandria wrote many books. One of his most famous is the Pneumatica. And pneumatics is all about the way in which air and gas can be used to move objects that were designed to surprise and give the impression of magic to the temple goer.
Only now are we beginning to understand the complex engineering systems that Heron used.
One really good example of Heron of Alexandria's work is the horse with a knife in its throat drinking while it's watched by a cherub-type being.
It was one of his most famous and celebrated machines and was known as number 78. It was an altarpiece used by the priests to demonstrate to the worshippers that the gods were present.
It is so complicated that it's baffled engineers and scientists even today. But basically, as the knife cut through the head of the horse, it interlocked with a series of cogs and gears. You have to imagine the actual head being connected to the body via a pipe, but this was a telescopic pipe. And as the knife cut through the head, it moved parts of the pipe apart. And when it passed through, it moved more gears, which moved the two parts of the pipe back together again.
The horse also appeared to magically drink from the priest's hand.
The cherub looks at the horse angrily, and it does nothing. And then when the cherub is turned around by a person, the horse begins to drink. Underneath the cherub, there's a long tube, and that long tube has a hole in it. And there's another tube on top of that. So when you turn the cherub around, it exposes the hole, and water pours out through the cherub, and down into a vat underneath. And the force of that water sucks air out of the horse's mouth and drags the water out of the cup, and it looks as if it's drinking.
It was placed on the altar by the priest. The automated machine would then create a powerful and awe-inspiring illusion that the gods had acted. It appeared to their followers that the priests had performed the impossible.
We shouldn't really be surprised at the presence of magic or technical trickery within religious contexts. These temples are powerful and wealthy institutions. The priests wish to maintain their position, and anything that will maintain or preferably enhance their position is something they'll go for.
Telling fortunes by examining animal entrails was just one of the techniques priests used to keep their congregation enthralled. Others, though less macabre, often showed amazing scientific and technical virtuosity, but the secrets of such techniques were jealously guarded.
Inside an ordinary temple, you have a separate area, the sanctuary. This is only visible to the worshippers through a single doorway. They're looking into a darkened inner sanctum. That inner sanctum is the perfect space for creating magical illusions.
Temples are deliberately kept dark. Temples are there to enhance a sense of mystery because it makes you easier to persuade. It makes the message easier to get across to you.
In the 1st century of the Common Era, building on the works of Ctesibius and Philon, Heron wrote a large number of works on mechanics and mathematics. He was equally at home designing machines for solving practical problems and putting the fear of God into the Alexandrian temple goer.
If he was making pieces for the temple, he would definitely be looking for things which were magical and mysterious, and that would affect people in a spiritual kind of way.
One of Heron's most famous devices was a beautiful representation of an archer and a dragon. This device was no ordinary altarpiece. Through advanced hydraulic technology, Heron created an archer that could shoot arrows at a dragon, just as the dragon emitted the sound of a roar.
This is one of probably the most famous models of Heron of Alexandria. Most of the medieval writers that have translated his treatise seem to have had a fascination with this particular piece. The story is loosely based on the labours of Heracles, who in the guise of an archer is firing an arrow at the dragon Ladon to kill him so he can claim the golden apples of the Hesperides.
This machine used water pressure to create the sound.
This is the internal mechanism of the archer piece. The pneumatic section consists of 2 vessels, an upper vessel which contains water and a lower vessel which is sealed. In the middle of the top vessel is a conical valve which, when lifted, allows the water to rush from the top vessel to the bottom vessel. As the level of water rises in the bottom vessel, there's nowhere for the air to go other than through this little pipe here, which then leads through the dragon to its mouth, and the compressed air actually blows the reed in the dragon's mouth, producing the sound.
Brilliantly, the act of raising the golden apple triggers both the firing of the archer's arrow and the water-driven mechanism. By using the movement of water through valves, the air which is produced causes the dragon to groan in pain. It was certainly no coincidence that Heron found an eager market for his inventions in Alexandria. Ever since it was founded by Alexander the Great, Alexandria was a cosmopolitan city, a melting pot for the Eastern Mediterranean.
Alexandria was East meets West. The ancient traditions of Egypt met the new flourishing Greek world. So Greek mathematicians, scientists, engineers, academics in all fields were able to feed off that ancient knowledge that existed in the temples of Egypt.
It was never considered as being an Egyptian city, because Egyptians, they did not like the Mediterranean Sea. They rather founded their cities on the River Nile. But Alexandria was a Greek foundation, and the Greek, they were a people of sailors. They needed the Mediterranean for their trading. So Alexandria was a place of many cultures, of many religions, of many different people that tried to live together.
For a priest in Alexandria, life was a comparative rat race, vying for the greatest number of worshippers. Those with the most awe-inspiring gadgetry were able to achieve the fullest temples.
If you look at the sort of religions in Alexandria, you've got a mixture of the secretive mystery religions, such as Isis, alongside more state religions, which are not so much about magic and the gods as about the maintenance of the status quo.
Alexandria had many strange and competing religions, but in order to try and create a powerful uniting force, the heir of Alexander the Great promoted one above all the others. It had a mighty god at its heart. The cult of Serapis combined elements of both Greek and Egyptian religions. Ancient texts tell of the bizarre mechanisms which were used by the priest in the temple consecrated to Serapis in Alexandria. In particular, one mechanism continues to astonish even today's modern world. Ancient writers describe a chariot that seemed to fly through the air on its own as if by magic. How could ancient inventors have conquered gravity? How could they have created such a wonder? Ancient Alexandria was a city famed for its library. It was where all the most important books of antiquity were stored. Texts on science, mechanics, art and philosophy were collected and studied by Alexandria's inventors and engineers. They knew the secrets of the Greek